how our ears screen out sounds so that we can listen selectively only to those sounds that we want to hear, like this programme or a friend's voice across a noisy room, for instance, has been revealed by scientists in Australia. Gary Housley from the University of New South Wales has found that the inner ear, known as the cochlea, contains a population of sound-sensitive hair cells that communicate with the brain and work like miniature amplifiers to control the sensitivity of the ears to different sound frequencies.
So when the sound enters our ear canal, first thing that happens is that our eardrum vibrates. And then the three smallest bones in our body, incus malleus and stapes, they vibrate and transmit that sound energy to the inner ear, to the cochlea, which is shaped a little bit like a snail shell. And what happens then is that the frequency of sound is distributed along that hearing organ, so that the highest frequency sounds vibrate at the base of the cochlea, and progressively lower frequency sounds set up a vibration more towards the top of the cochlea. Now, those vibrations are detected by sensory cells called hair cells, and the hair cells excite auditory nerve fibres. That information is transmitted to the cochlear nucleus in the brainstem, and from there the signal is distributed to higher centres in the brain and ultimately to our auditory cortex, which is very close to our speech processing part of our brain as well, so that we can hear and integrate that with our conversation.
Now, if I'm watching the notional person speaking to me across a very noisy room, they're going to be producing certain frequencies of sound, which I'm obviously tuning into in order to dissect out what they're saying from the general hubbub going on. This means that in some way and by some mechanism, the parts of my cochlea which are sensitive to and detecting those sound frequencies that my friend is producing, they're being tuned into those sounds. So how does that happen?
The field of hearing science has known for a long time that it's a two-way street. The sound information going to the brain is very rapidly interpreted, and then there's a signal back from the brain to the cochlea, which regulates the sensitivity of those sensory hair cells. 3/4 of the sensory cells have devolved to this function of being amplifiers and effectively dynamically tuning the sensitivity of our hearing. What we discovered is that those cells also encode sound, but when they do that, it's dedicated to providing an input to the brain that is then able to be used to feedback and control that amplifier. So effectively those cells both send the information about how well the amplifier is performing and receive from the brain a control back to alter certain parts of the cochlea so that we can hear better what the conversation is.
Does the cochlea inside an ear on one side only control itself, or do you get control going to both ears? So when one sound comes into one ear, both get amplified or turned down accordingly? Or does one ear principally turn off or on the activity of the opposite ear?
In the study, what we're able to find is that this feedback pathway has two different processes to it. One of those is that the sound coming into one ear through this feedback pathway provides a sustained reduction in hearing sensitivity. Now, what that means is, it's a little complicated, but what it means is that if you have sound coming in one side, then that ear rapidly desensitizes, but sends some of that signal through the brainstem to feedback and shut down the sensitivity in the other ear. And we believe that's actually very significant for understanding, the development of binaural hearing, and it has implications for development of hearing aids and cochlear implants, because it just shows that hearing's literally a two-way street where you can't just rely on amplifying sound in each ear, but you have to appreciate that the way that sound is received and interpreted by the brain assumes a difference in weighting depending on the changes in sound intensity in the two sides.
That certainly sounds very promising. Gary Housley from UNSW in Sydney speaking with Chris.